So good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and patrons of Villa Aurora. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the conference on Hannah Arendt, What is Politics? At Villa Aurora, the former home of German Jewish writer Leon Feuchtwanger and his wife Martha. November 9th, the date of Kristallnacht in 1938, marked the beginning of the Holocaust. Martha and Leon Feuchtwanger found refuge in Los Angeles after being persecuted by the Nazis in Germany and later in France. They fled through Spain and Portugal and finally arrived in the US in 1942. Their home in Pacific Palisades, this house, became a meeting place for artists and intellectuals like Bertolt Brecht, Arnold Schönberg, Charlie Chaplin, Thomas and Heinrich Mann, and many more. Leon Feuchtwanger never returned to Germany. Having been denied an American passport, he was afraid that he would not be allowed to re-enter the United States. He died in Los Angeles in 1958. Martha continued to live at the villa until her death in 1987. She kept very active socially and politically and wanted the villa to remain a vital venue for artists and for intellectual exchange. After her death, various German journalists and politicians who shared Martha's vision for the villa convinced sponsors and funders to restore the house and to establish a fellowship program for artists. To honor this history, we are inaugurating an annual conference to focus on the exiled community and other notable people who were and are engaged in fostering the transatlantic intellectual exchange in their work. We could not have made a better choice than Hannah Arendt and her writings on politics as the subject of our first conference. She is a political theorist who has thought and written about what politics is and what we can achieve in its pursuit. Jonathan Ray captured the essence of Hannah Arendt's philosophy of politics in his article, Whatever Happened to Hannah Arendt from 2006. In discussing Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism, he said, "Politics for Hannah Arendt was a precious cultural achievement rather than a regrettable social necessity, and it involved the careful maintenance of institutions that enable people to converse freely and respectfully about the world as they see it and as they would like it to be. It was essentially concerned with problems of a kind that will never have perfect solutions, and which therefore require improvisation, invention, and endless critical discussion. Politics required us to set aside all sentiments of pride, indignation, shame or resentment, as well as any pretensions to superior expertise, in order to become responsive, intelligent citizens, willing to negotiate all our differences on a basis of complete equality. Politics, in short, was the opposite of totalitarianism, and it depended on an open-hearted love for human plurality." And now, I would like to introduce you to Marie-Louise Knott, who developed the concept for this conference. Marie-Louise Knott is a freelance author, journalist, and translator based in Berlin. She is the author of Unlearning with Hannah Arendt, to be published in English in 2014 by Other Press, New York. She also edited the correspondence between Hannah Arendt and Gershom Scholem, and more recently co-edited the translated a book of poetic writings by John Cage entitled Empty Mind. Ms. Knott will introduce you to the speakers and to today's program. I'd like to thank our funders, the German Federal Foreign Office, and the German Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and the Media for their support. Please make yourselves at home. I look forward to a lively and critical exchange and discussion. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, first of all, for my part, to the Villa Aurora, who made this conference possible. And a special thank you to Annette Rupp, you who initiated the conference and invited me to take part in it. Thank you to all the speakers today and tomorrow, especially to those who made a long trip and had to contend successfully with jet lag. And thank you to all of you here who came to this place today, where once refugees from Germany fought for a political future and for a voice in the world. To announce this conference on what is politics, I borrowed from Hannah Arendt's essays a quotation that she herself had borrowed from Shakespeare without mentioning the famous author. The quote is as follows: "The time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right." Indeed, when Hannah Arendt first introduced this verse into a text of hers in 1954, times were really out of joint. Her concern at the time was the threatening wordlessness of the world, a world devastated by totalitarianism. But not only ideology and terror of totalitarian state was a threat to politics, but also the emerging conformism of mass society that she realized at the time was taking place in the US. How could one avoid being a cog in the wheel of history or nature? Arendt, born in 1906 in Germany, studied philosophy and was thrown into politics firstly by the rise of Nazism. Between 1930 and 1947, politics to her meant Jewish politics, the right to fight. The right to have rights was one of the undeveloped threads at the end of her work on totalitarianism, which was the beginning of a struggle with the new phenomena of conformism. Up to today, the inherent rules of mass society and the predominance of public relations in politics have not lost the power to principally destroy political action wherever they appear. But of course, there are new threats to body politics today. Arendt was aware of the possible destruction of the world as a world of men in plural when she, with the human condition, tried to reinvent the realm, later with On Revolution, the idea of new political foundations, and in the crisis of the Republic, the right to civil disobedience. Her whole life was bent under the question, can we succeed in reconstituting a world that is out of joint? Might we find new ways of human involvement in the unfolding of the world? Hannah Arendt did not use Shakespeare's quote to confirm her argument, as researchers often do. Instead, in her fight for plurality, she organized her own texts as a kind of stage where she introduced different voices and experiences from different times who could help her and us in this world that is out of joint. Man needs help from every creature born. Let me recall quickly the context of the Shakespeare's quote. Hamlet has returned to Denmark, where he is mourning the death of his father, the king. Like everyone else, he has been told by the royal family that his father died of a snake bite, but in the reality of the drama, the king has been murdered, as we know, by his brother and successor Claudius, who is also his wife's lover. The political propaganda machine, organized by Hamlet's mother and the new king, the public lying of the new rulers and murderers, so to speak, this propaganda lie does indeed do its work, as in fact no one guesses the heinous crime. The entire court lives in the harmonious illusion of communal mourning the dead king. The deed, the action, indeed is so monstrous, so unimaginable, that the living do not even have a language in which to conceive of it. Only the appearance of a ghost, the ghost of Hamlet's father, can reveal the unconceivable. But Hamlet cannot share with anyone what has been revealed to him. He must feign madness, as we know, in order to continue to live in the community, knowing the truth. Lying in politics is an experience of ancient times, and more so, as we know, it's an experience that also belongs to today. What Shakespeare brought into Arendt's text was the experience that a world in which the facts are unreal is a nightmare. In Hamlet's monologue, to be, meaning to live in a world that faces up to the present, is confronted by not to be, meaning to live in a world that pretends to have assimilated to the false realities created by the murderer. In Hamlet, help comes from the traveling players, the strangers who do not fear what has been revealed to them, because they are not part of the society. The appearance of these strangers, or pariahs, provides the impetus to set it right with the play, within the play. As tragic as the story of Hamlet is, the appearance on the stage of the World Theatre and his later appearance through a quote in Arendt's text tells us of humane attempt to resist the advance of evil, even and especially in the state of Denmark, where the evil deed goes beyond human imagination. Arendt used the quote from Hamlet for the first time in 1954 in her lecture concerned with politics and recent European philosophical thought. In her heavy German accent, she provided the American audience with an overview of the condition of post-war European philosophy. According to her, none of its various practitioners, Heidegger, Jaspers, Sartre, Maritain and others, had as of yet really come to conceptual grips with the shock of what never should have occurred. Recent political experience was, as she wrote, in fact almost absent from their analytical concepts. Arendt's lecture, conceived at the time while she was writing The Human Condition, is a vehement plea that philosophy must loosen its preconceived convictions and instead has to face the deeds and of course the misdeeds of human experience and to rectify politics. In the same year, in 1954, Arendt used Shakespeare's Out of Joint a second time, and this time the voice of Hamlet brings another aspect of the political into a thought space. And we're all dealing with these aspects of politics today. At the time dominated solely by society, as she put it in her introduction into politics, she sought to find a new foundation for the political to counter the growth of wordlessness. Many outside voices here inhabit Arendt's observation on the endangered present. And while in the first lecture, the quote from Hamlet reinforced the urgency of recognizing what was foul in the state of Denmark, in the new context of introduction into politics, it emphasizes more strongly the necessity, indeed the task, of working together, to set right the time that is out of joint. Nay, come, let's go together. Thus ends Act 1 of Hamlet. To the extent that we are human beings, Arendt asserts, we cannot live under desert conditions. If we adjust to Nietzsche's desert world, where the windstorm of progress blows and men threaten to assimilate to society, hope fades of a humane world made by humans. Totalitarianism threatens to set in motion the desert life itself, unleashing the sandstorm over all parts of the inhabited world so that everything breaks out in pseudo-action. Let me put it this way. We are still intact and human precisely because, like Hamlet, we suffer under desert conditions. And we will hear of this suffering and its consequences in Arendt's work today and tomorrow. Arendt's whole work can be read as a struggle for this shared world to arrange itself as a stage, where, with every human being born, a new voice can come and put its own weight into the agora, to change the world, to set it right, in defense of politics, in defense of civil rights, and in defense of political councils. We will hear in the next hours and tomorrow about her different struggles with Hamlet's to be, namely to face reality and to overthrow preconceived concepts that have proved invalid. But before, I want to mention one aspect. One of the main qualities for political action in Arendt's thought space is courage. And given the tone of her Eichmann report, one can assume today that to write this book of hers, she needed a distinct courage. The courage to let go of old convictions, but also the courage to let go of the false realities that such convictions had created with them. Here, her whole person was at stake. And with the Eichmann report, which appeared in the same year as her book on revolution, a new era began, as you know. Arendt who at the time was renowned as a political philosopher in the universities, suddenly became a well-known and in some circles notorious public figure in the US. The harsh debates about her book took place not only in universities, not only in intellectual magazines, not only in Jewish communities, but her book also triggered talks at kitchen tables. Arendt became something like a household name. After Eichmann and on Jerusalem, and on Revolution, the girl from abroad had turned to be an American intellectual. She had become an American voice who contributed influential and insightful essays on the Vietnam War and on Watergate, who addressed such topics as the contamination of the political sphere by boundless lies and use of imagery as a tool for the indoctrination of the American public. Arendt's paria-like perspective diagnosed and imperiled politics in the democratic state, always with the experience of totalitarianism in the back of her mind, and always ever since her arrival as a harbinger of the European disaster. That's why we're here today. Sorry, I want to cut. As the obituary, a eulogy for the girl from abroad that appeared in the New Yorker shortly after her death declared, I quote, "Some days ago, Hannah Arendt died at the age of 69. We felt a tremor, as if some counterweight to all the world's unreason and corruption had been removed. How lucky it was that she had entered the stage of the world, had fled Europe, and had taken part in the struggles to set it right. As Villa Aurora is the place where Leon Feuchtwanger, Bertolt Brecht, Gretel and Theodor Adorno and many others commemorated the past, invented the possibilities of today's, and in sometimes harsh debates contrived the future, I hope we will do likewise and touch in our debates the relevance of Arendt's thinking for today's political intricacy.